Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube with some more kind of last couple of week reports. Leading up to the launch, we're we're officially in Apple Vision Pro territory now. It's that time of year, early 2024, and we're getting more I wouldn't call them last minute leaks, last week leaks leading up to the launch. Although I don't even know if we would have discovered this from Apple themselves. It was a surprisingly light on the details event, site refresh. But Apple doesn't usually talk about RAM that much in their products, although they tend to talk about it more with Macs, which have M chips, and Vision Pro has M chips. So, anyway, the thumbnail is accurate, though, according to Xcode data, as well as people aware of the dev kits that were sent out to a very select few of people. Apple's been very secretive, they've been very quiet about how Vision Pro is. And they seem to be very calculated about how the reviews are going to be conducted. But at least according to the rumors, which I think this late in the game, they must be real. I mean, they don't have to be, but it's very likely that Vision Pro will have a default 16 gigabytes of unified memory, which is kind of interesting to me. Um, it's good, obviously, much better than 8 gigs of unified memory, which is what I initially thought it was going to be, just based on how, you know, penny pinching they were about the NAND storage having 256 gigs, which is, ay, ay, ay. But there's more talk about that as well. So, according to people who got exclusive access to Apple Vision Pro dev kits, they're claiming that there were variants of Vision Pro that went up to 1 terabyte of internal storage, which kind of, in my opinion, weakens the argument of people who are advocating that 256 gigs is fine, 256 gigs is plenty. I mean, it depends on the product, obviously. If we're talking about, an $800 or, a $1,000, $1,200 phone, if we're talking about a $1,000 laptop, then yeah, I could understand 256 gigs getting by because you spread out the margins across different tiers. Obviously, the price to manufacture, putting a 256 gig NAND versus a 1 terabyte NAND, which is a tiny little chip over in regards to the span of the entire computer, it doesn't cost that much difference. Okay, it's not costing Apple an extra 100, 200, 300, $400 extra to put in those higher NANDs, but you spread out the margin so that you can have a thinner margin on the entry level product and a very thick margin to offset that on the higher end options. But the pricing ladder structure where you spread out the margins a little bit, I personally, I don't think Vision Pro is the type of product you need to do that with. It's kind of a halo product. It's super rare. They're not even building that many of them. It's the only Apple product that gets space in the website menu bar at the top, whilst also only being available in the United States. And the entry level option is $3,500. For that amount of money, I feel like you should just go all out with it. Just put in the biggest NAND you got, whatever. It doesn't, like, maybe that's too much storage. It's like, yeah, it should be too much storage because you're paying $3,500 for a device with a 2 hour battery life. So I thought Apple was, going a little bit unnecessarily cheap. Um, on the 256 gigs, and the concept that there could be options that go up to 1 terabyte. Well, is that overkill or is that justified? If Apple's willing to bring that to market, then that means it's not completely overkill, in which case it's possible that Apple is still applying that same pricing structure that we've seen with MacBooks and iPhones and iPads, where you apply several $100s on top of the starting price based on those higher storage configurations, in which case Apple Vision Pro, and it kills me to say this, might be far more expensive than we even realized. We thought 3,500 would be kind of the one size fits all. It seems like there's a very real possibility that is just the base trim with 256 gigs. And if you want to load it up with more, spatial video recordings or with more storage, um, that's going to be pricey. Um, I could bring up the Mac. I'm looking at the Mac Rumors article right now, but I don't think it really says all that much more. I mean, it's kind of in the headline. Features 16 gigs of RAM and likely up to 1 terabyte of storage. That's basically what I'm looking at right now, which is kind of what we were just describing. But there you go. You can pull up the web page, or I can do it, one or the other. Um, each 512 gig in higher NAND is personally kissed by Tim Cook for good luck, and that's why it's $200. Okay, well, that's a good argument. Why Jake Choi? You know, I might actually be willing to excuse the low storage if Tim Cook personally kisses each one. That's part of the Foundation series, Apple Vision Pro. They have actually the whole Apple executive team. Craig, Jaws, John, everybody's just kissing the glass on the front. It's beautiful. Do we know anything about possibility to connect third-party video output device? I mean, 3,500 for glasses that can't play PlayStation 5, so you need to buy TV. Some people that say the TV price is included. Yeah, I don't think it's going to do that. As far as I'm aware, there's just that one little barrel plug on the side. EU's going to love that one when it comes to them. Um, and just that little barrel plug, as far as I can tell, that's pretty much just for power. I haven't seen anyone claim that that little barrel plug can also do a bunch of data transfer, or if it does data transfer, it's a very, very small amount, kind of like MagSafe 3 on the MacBook Pros. Its primary focus is power delivery. There's probably a tiny amount of data just to translate to the brick or whatever how much power it needs, but not a lot. Um, I should buy one of these just to mess with my coworkers. Sure, $3,500. Great prank. Absolutely. Predicting Vision Pro will be a huge fail for Apple, too expensive in tech that's not ready. 1 billion write off for Apple. I don't think they're going to lose much money on it personally. If they're putting 256 gig in the $3,500 trim, I can only imagine that if the rumors are true and you can get a 1 terabyte model, that's probably going to be $4,000 and it will cost next to nothing more to manufacture. So I don't think they're going to lose money on it. And I also think they're not able to build enough for us to really know whether or not this is going to be a big fail because it's so limited in supply. And I predict that, I mean, we'll find out when we do pre-orders next week. I'm going to do a live stream for that, by the way. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to have huge bags under my eyes. Well, I got those already anyway. What's the big deal? I'm going to wake up super early Friday morning, January 19th, not this Friday, but the following Friday. And I'll order one as quickly as I can, hopefully get it on launch day, but we'll see how quickly the ship dates start slipping. And we'll kind of base the ship dates slipping on how much demand there is versus how much supply there is. So my point is, I don't think they're building enough Vision Pro headsets for us to figure out whether or not that it is a flop, because it's so low volume that, okay, maybe the market's really small, but if they sell every one they make, that's still a really small market. So I don't think we're going to know whether or not spatial computing is the future or Vision OS devices are going to be a huge flop. We're not going to know within the first year or two of production. I think Apple knows that. I think they're aware that this is a expensive product. That's why they put Pro in the name on purpose. They kind of are alluding to the concept from the beginning that this is a high-end, entry-level first-generation product, and I don't think they're expecting this to be a mainstream thing. They're not stupid, guys. They're like you've come to this miraculous conclusion. You know what I don't think Apple thought about? They probably didn't think about the fact that not everybody can spend $3,500 on goggles. What a realization! Oh my God. They know. I think they're aware of that. This is more of like it's more of a high volume dev kit than anything. Who was describing it that way? Was it Snazzy Labs? I think it was Snazzy Labs. He has the best takes. One day when I grow up, I hope to be more like Quinn Nelson. um, Let me find that tweet. I'm curious how he phrased it. Uh, he made a lot of tweets actually. There's too much news all happening at the same time. No pre-launch event like the Apple Watch. No opportunities for dev/press that have tried it to discuss it/show it. Well, or we might do that next week. Who knows? Here it is. This was about 20 hours ago. He tweeted, "This thing is basically a dev kit, but available to seemingly everyone for what it's supposed to be the next generation of computing. There's shockingly little detail and build up to release. Does that mean it will suck? No, but it's weird and unlike any other Apple launch, which I agree with in a positive way. I like the fact that it's so weird and so different, and the fact that Apple's so quiet about it kind of makes it more interesting to me, because most of what Apple does is not that interesting. I hate to say it. As an Apple sheep, um, everything Apple does is just slight iteration and slight refinement on products that have existed for a decade now. Um, Apple Watch has been around. It's about to hit its 10-year anniversary. Apple Watch is just iteration, iteration. iPad iteration. Even the OLED display coming to the iPad is not some big, innovative, game-changing thing. It's just like, okay, the display has a little bit better dynamic range now. Okay, you're still going to use it the exact same way. Same thing with the iPhone. The camera gets a little bit better. They slightly tweak the chassis a little bit. There's an action button instead of a ringer switch, little things here and there. Whereas Apple Vision Pro is the first thing in what feels like a decade Apple actually fundamentally rethinking a product category and trying something brand new. We kind of had AirTags in there, but those were mostly just like Apple saying we can build Tile better. And there wasn't much to it after that. They were like, here they are, they exist. Okay. And then that was it. Yeah, they're great. They work. They're cheap. It's fine. It's just kind of an Apple, and then a bunch of stalkers use it. So Apple just kind of slapped their logo on someone else's idea. I don't look at Vision Pro that way. Vision Pro feels a lot more innovative. It feels a lot more unique compared to everything else in both good and bad ways. Most people that try to do VR headsets or mixed reality headsets are going for gaming emphasis or enterprise emphasis, and Apple seems to be trying to make it more, I don't know, average consumer friendly. There's really not much gaming emphasis on Vision Pro at all. It's kind of shocking how little gaming emphasis there is. Um, on 8 a.m. East Coast, I'll already be at work. Well, gotta quit your job, Dylan. I think that's the only reasonable. It's the only reasonable choice to be made. Do I think games like Beat Saber will come over to Vision Pro? I don't think, from everything they've demoed, especially when it comes to gaming, there's no controllers, and maybe there's some games that could. Maybe I'm understanding this wrong, but all of the game demos I've seen of Apple Vision Pro are mostly like just a big TV. You just pair it with a controller and act like you have a big TV in front of you. I haven't seen that many games or experiences from third parties that let you fully immerse yourself in a game. Um, I hope someone figures that out, because that's like probably one of the most common games played on VR headsets. But Apple says, don't use VR. Don't use that terminology. You're not supposed to say that. Um, uh, Burkhardt says, I just wanted you to pull it up because my name is at the bottom and I wanted to have my SpongeBob moment where he points at his head on the TV screen. Oh, okay. That's understandable. Fair. Also, I forgot to mention Michael Lazito earlier. Am I going to keep Vision Pro? Highly unlikely. However, thank you for 28 months of support. I don't know. It depends, I guess, on how much you guys want me to keep it. Like, if I can justify it for the channel, it would be an easier, argument. But I just actually assembled a new playlist today. I was looking at the playlists on the Tailosive Tech channel. I have just a handful of playlists that kind of categorize a bunch of similar topics together. Like, I have a playlist of just unboxings, or just product reviews, or just reviews of internet service, which includes cellular service and Wi-Fi. I have one playlist of just iPad stuff, and one playlist of just what was it, unboxings and that kind of thing, or iPhone leaks. So on that list, one of the smallest playlists I had was about foldables. There was only about 20, 25 videos I've made over the years about foldables. And I was like, we're really not talking that much about foldables. Um, this is an Apple focused channel. Apple, I don't think, is really getting into foldables. So I just deleted that playlist because you can only show so many on your channel homepage. But I did decide to create a new playlist called Spatial Computing, which is basically just all of my videos about Apple Vision Pro or Vision OS. And I started assembling those videos, and I'm really excited by it, and I'm really pumped about it. I think, as far as Apple goes, it's the most interesting thing going on right now, which I felt Like we're getting ahead of ourselves. 2024 is going to zoom by way too fast because someone was asking me like, what tech are you most excited for? Not EV related, obviously. If we get into EV, I'm just gonna not shut up about Aptera all day. But um, as far as consumer tech, smaller electronics goes, what am I most excited for in 2024? And hands down, it was Apple Vision Pro. I was like, that is by far the most interesting thing going on. And it's already coming out so early. This is February 2nd, Groundhog Day, and it's already going to be here. What are we going to talk about the rest of the year? That after spatial computing and thinking about redesigning our whole ecosystem around wearing goggles all the time and having that be kind of our last display, does this mean we need TVs anymore? Can this replace the Apple Watch? Can this replace the iPad? All of these crazy thoughts, and then we go back to, well, the MacBook Air might get an M3 chip later. Like how is it supposed to top all of this crazy new exciting tech that we're getting within the first quarter? Everything else moving forward is going to be a lot more oh, the 16 Pro might get a little bit bigger. Ooh. Yeah, the iPhone 6 was a foldable, that's true. Just not a good cycle life. Do I think it'll ever be socially acceptable to wear it in public? Can't imagine being someone wear it on the subway right now. I don't think the first generation, but I could visualize slimmer, cleaner, nicer looking versions in the future that look a little bit more like ski goggles. Ski goggles, I feel like, are somewhat socially acceptable. I mean, it's a little bit weirder than sunglasses. Some people wear pretty big sunglasses. It'll be a stretch for sure. Like, I don't think it'll catch on as quickly as the iPhone did or AirPods did, but I do remember very clearly, very vividly, because I was making tech videos at the time. I was actually making them almost, I wasn't quite full time yet, but I was making a decent amount off of my tech channel when AirPods launched. And I was in love with them from day one. I was like, this is always what I wanted. I love the Apple EarPod design, but I always wanted wireless headphones. I was buying third party Bluetooth headphones all the time. I was never using the headphone jack, even on my iPhone 5 and 6. I wasn't using the headphone jack because I always preferred wireless headphones, and I just kept saying, I wish Apple would make wireless headphones, please. They would do it so much better because the third parties I was buying with were not that great, but that's how much I hated wires. And then AirPods came out, and I was like, yes, I finally got what I wanted. This is great. And everyone hated them. Everyone was hating on them, and they said, that looks ridiculous. No one's going to wear these things that have sticks coming out of your ears. Um, and there was a lot of backlash from that design. A lot of people saying, Steve Jobs rolling in his grave. Steve would hate this. And they got a lot of ridicule when they first launched, and over time they went mainstream. Now, I don't think Apple Vision Pro is going to go mainstream as quickly as AirPods did because AirPods were only $160, not $3,500. And one of them you're wearing in your ear, one of them you're wearing on your face. So, yeah, not an apples to apples comparison, although Apple did make both. People wore face diapers. Is it, are we going there? I don't want to go there. I don't personally think I will keep it, but I don't think that means it's not a interesting chapter in Apple history, basically. I don't know. Maybe I'll try it and I'll really fall in love with it, but then it's going to be a different battle. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure. There's so many things I don't know. I've tried VR headsets. Actually, I was just at a friend's house last week, and he had a Quest, Meta Quest headset, but he had my same MacBook Pro, and he said that he often used his Quest with the MacBook so he could have three giant external monitors. And I was like, I was thinking about that too because for a while now, I've just had the MacBook and I used to edit everything on my iMac Pro, and I still prefer editing on a big screen to the smaller screen. But part of the reason I've been hesitant to get an external monitor is I don't really like any of them. All of them have their own separate issues. Like the third party monitors are always plasticky and the bezels aren't symmetrical and they look kind of ugly. And I don't know. I'm not in love with the third party monitors I found. And I love the design and style of Apple's monitors, like the Studio Display or the Pro Display XDR. But the problem is both of those have worse displays than my MacBook. So I feel like there's a compromise of some kind when I go big. I have to have a 60 hertz display or worse dynamic range. I believe the mini LED on the MacBook Pro has way more local dimming. No, I know it does. The MacBook Pro has way more dimming zones than the Pro Display XDR, um, and also the Pro Display XDR. It's a gorgeous monitor. I always check one out whenever I go to an Apple store. I always look at that screen. I love the look of it. I love the chassis. I love how thin and symmetrical the bezels are. I don't need the nano texture though. I like the glossy. That's fine. Although in the third party market, it's honestly kind of hard to find glossy monitors. I know about the Eve monitor thing. That's a whole different battle. Um, you should make a Tailosive monitor. Yeah, that sounds easy. The monitors you have seen suck. Yeah, other than the Apple monitors, but then the Apple monitors have different compromises. They're too expensive. And I remember saying, I think I said this on the podcast at some point, but I remember looking at the Pro Display XDR and I was like, this is so cool. This is gorgeous. But $5,000, $6,000, that's too much. And the other issue I have with buying an external monitor is I travel a lot. You know, last year, me and my wife did the math. More than 25% of the year, we were not at home. So if I spent, you know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a monitor for a quarter of the year, it would just sit on my desk and I wouldn't be able to use it. And then when I'm traveling, I wouldn't be able to access the bigger screen anyway. So all that being said, plus there's other financial goals we have in regards to savings and investments and that type of thing. It's like, not only would that be a waste of money, but I would just personally feel bad about I know how I felt about previous purchase decisions. I know for a fact I would have buyer's remorse. I would just be like, yeah, that was a lot of money to spend on this thing that I'm not even getting to use when I travel. So the concept entered my mind a while ago of like, well, if there was a way for me to easily travel with a big monitor, um, no, I don't mean like a portable, tiny monitor. I mean like the headset concept that I could get behind is, well, Apple Vision Pro I would take with me on trips, and I could have a giant external monitor everywhere I go that would pair up with my Mac, and I could use that wherever I'm traveling. And Apple Vision Pro, relative to the price of the Pro Display XDR, is a bit more affordable. Also, a lot less compromises. Apple Vision Pro is still very high resolution. It's 4K for each eye. It's an OLED display, so it should have great dynamic range. And it also goes up to 100 hertz. That was another criticism I had of the Pro Display XDR and the Studio display is I'm used to ProMotion on my MacBook, and the Vision Pro doesn't quite have ProMotion. It's not 120, but it gets up to 100. I think under certain lighting conditions, on different lighting conditions. Like I think if the lighting conditions are good, basically it goes up to 90 hertz. If your lighting conditions are bad, I think it dips down to 90. I don't think it ever goes down to 60. Um, which is like, hey, that I mean, would my eye be able to tell the difference between 120 hertz and 100 hertz? Probably not. I mean, some people will probably claim they can see the difference, but I bet it's placebo. It's just because they factually know one of them is 100 hertz. The difference between 120 and 100 is very, very subtle compared to the difference between 120 and 60, which is what I would get on a typical Apple external monitor. And again, there's much cheaper monitors. If anything, I'd be much more tempted to just buy a cheap external monitor so that I wouldn't feel that bad about leaving it behind. But even then it's like, okay, I want a big screen, but I need to try this headset on because the comfort levels of it for extended use, sometimes I'm working at my desk for hours. I stand up occasionally, but I'm still like, I'd be working on something for hours and hours at a time. So if my eyes get sore or my head gets sore after wearing Apple Vision Pro for like 90 minutes, that's a deal breaker. That's a no go. It's like, okay, I thought, or if I've done a lot of flights and Vision Pro is supposed to be better in flights. Okay, well, if when I wear it during flights I get sore and I can't wear it after a certain amount of time, that's going to be a much bigger issue. Or if I get motion sickness after a while, um, that's that's going to be hard to justify a device that you can really only use an hour at a time, right? So the comfort level is a big question, and yeah, also the detail level, because there's a chance I try it on, and sure, the resolution may claim it's really high, but I tried out my friend's Quest using the Mac OS external monitor support. So I had three giant screen monitors connected to his MacBook, and I tried it out. And, I was on it for about 15, 20 minutes, so it wasn't an extended use, but it was, I wouldn't say the experience is the same as having a giant TV screen. just because you're looking through these little lenses that are creating the illusion of a different environment. But I don't know, maybe because the displays are further away or something in your virtual space, they're further away. You know, your eyes have to pretend as if they're further away to focus. They didn't feel massive to me. Um, but what I was impressed by, that I will give the Quest credit for, is that even though they didn't have a pass through mode working on the Quest I was using, I don't think it was a Quest 3. Um, it was able to track my hands really, really well. And it had a virtual keyboard in front of me so that I could reach forward and easily select and type on the virtual keyboard, even though I couldn't technically see the actual keyboard. Like the virtual world was tracking a virtual keyboard on top of the physical one. And I would ask my wife, like, tell me which letter to point to. And she said, point to the letter Y. And I could just, the hand tracking was that good that I could put my finger on the letter Y and I got it right, even though technically my vision was concealed. So that kind of recreation of reality was pretty good. And I'm sure Apple Vision Pro is just going to be even better at that because it has, everyone keeps saying, the best pass through ever. Um, so the best way I could justify it is that it's really comfortable for extended usage, and it's a big screen monitor that feels like a big screen monitor because unlike the Meta Quest, I could actually adjust like where in my virtual space the monitor sits. I like the concept that Apple is pushing with spatial computing, that you don't immerse yourself in a virtual world, you're just blending computing into your actual environment. I'm more on board with that because Quest has a little bit of pass through, but I feel like for the most part, it's kind of just like cover your surroundings. Um, I can't wait to stare at someone with the eyesight screen and say, "Isn't this natural?" I hope they release Vision Pro in the EU this year. I don't think so, pal. Get the studio display and retrofit a new display inside with high. Why don't you tell me how to do that, and then we'll figure it out. I would love to see someone else do that, but I was close to buying the Linus Tech Tips backpack for $250 last night, but I found an almost identical alternative on Amazon for $35. Well, that's a great option too if you're on a budget. Linus Tech Tips backpack's a great option if you want to support Linus. I think most people are aware of that. You don't buy YouTuber merch because it's the best value. You buy it because you want to support the YouTuber, right? Anyway, whatever you decide is fine. I'm just excited for whatever Samsung decided to do to compete, if they even can. They have yet to even solve a wearable as good as the Apple Watch. There's a lot of them though. A lot of people buy Samsung wearables still. Even if the price was less than $100, I wouldn't buy Apple Vision Pro. Really? And you're the guy with like 3 iPads, right? Do I think Apple will make AR glasses, VR's Vision Pro? I don't. I mean, technically, yes, it is covering your eyesight, but I don't think so. At least not in the near term. I think a lot of people assume that the glasses are right around the corner, but the biggest problem with Apple Vision Pro is battery life. And glasses would not help alleviate that problem. Um, Glasses have a huge different set of problem getting the weight down, getting the battery life down, and if you're trying to just put pixels on a transparent display, I think the frame rate and the motion tracking and the resolution take a huge nosedive compared to just having your eyes look at a full display instead of transparent display. So I have a hunch. I mean, I know most people who see Apple Vision Pro says like, well, this is the early model, but in the future it'll be glasses and it'll be thin and light. I actually think there's a real chance that the glasses never really catch on because there are too many compromises when it comes to the battery life and the weight. It might fundamentally from the get-go just be easier to build a headset that just has really good pass-through with cameras on the outside and displays on the inside. Is that a little dystopian, crazy future, though? That in the future, everybody's technically just looking at displays instead of their actual surroundings? Well, maybe, but that's kind of the world we're living in already. Look at how much screen time people have. People are complaining about their phones not lasting 10 hours a day. Okay, we're talking about almost half of the day. Definitely more than people's waking hours are spent looking at a phone already. So, looking through, you know, display and cameras to the outside world instead of just holding a phone might actually help you be a little bit more in the moment because now your computing is being blurred together with your reality instead of being so separated like it is right now. Am I gonna buy the Vision, bro? Bro, thank you for the super chat, AZs. Um, yeah, I don't intend on keeping it, but yeah, I do plan on ordering it. Um, put some wheels on the Pro Display XPR. Now it's portable. Well, that's another thing. I have never held or even seen in person a Vision Pro headset. And there's a very real chance I will not hold one or see one until February 2nd, launch day. I don't know how easy that thing is going to be to pack. And I try to travel light as I can. My MacBook is pretty thin. I think it's light. Other people claim the 16 inch is really heavy. I still think I fold it up and move it around all the time. So I can easily slide it into my backpack. I'm curious how hard or how easy it's going to be to pack up and store Vision Pro if I'm going on a trip, which will affect kind of my how usable is this? How it's a lot of money, so it's got a lot of boxes to check. So I don't, for the same reason that I used to say, like, oh, I'm never going to upgrade my 13 Pro Max. And then obviously I did. Dylan White's watching my old videos, calling me out on all my hypocrisy. I know. This is why I'm trying my best not to make definitive claims. Like everybody's like, are you going to keep it? Are you going to buy it? It's like, I haven't tried it yet. I haven't even put the device on. I've never experienced Vision OS. I've never tried spatial computing really. Um, so why would I come to a conclusion? Why would I base a decision off of something I haven't even tried yet? Don't dock it till you try it, right? So I'm gonna try it and then come to a final conclusion. But my personal guess, if I had to guess right now, is probably won't be able to justify it. But I'm still excited by it. I keep in mind when it comes to new Apple product categories, the first generation is rarely the favorite. It's pretty much never the favorite. Everybody loves the iterations. Everybody loves the follow-ups. Everybody loves the improvements that come later, not the first generation. Yeah, I did a little bit of pass through with the Quest 2, but my point is it doesn't blur when you're doing the external monitor stuff. It's just like a virtual desk, it's a virtual office space that puts some monitors up. Whereas Apple's in favor of not an virtual space. It's just like your space, but now you can put your big MacBook external monitor wherever you want. It could be further away. It could be closer. I would actually, because I what do you call it? Nearsighted? Because I'm nearsighted, I'm more interested in being able to take that virtual display and bring it closer in my spatial awareness because my eyes can focus on it better. I feel like whenever I try, the what was it? The not the X Real Virtue when I not Virtue Vitcher. When I tried the Vitcher AR glasses, it's designed to feel like the big screen that you're looking at is really far away, and that was more blurry to me. I could never get it in focus. It never felt comfortable. So Apple's really good usually at making devices that are comfortable and sharp and just immersive. So I'm very curious to see their take on it, experience it. Is the hype real? Are people over exaggerating how cool it is just for the clout, just so they can say they had a cool experience because they got invited to the Apple presentation? Or is the hype justified? Are people downplaying how immersive and how surreal it is? I don't know. Nicholas Linthicum says, should I super chat $3,500 for you to keep the Vision Pro? Um, no, you should not do that. First of all, you can't super chat more than $500 anyway. Secondly, if you really wanted to donate that much, that's crazy. Don't do it. But contact me via other means, be it through Twitter or because YouTube's going to take 30% of that super chat anyway. So if you're very much serious, you're just like, yes, Drew, I really want to buy a Vision Pro for you so you can keep it. Something's wrong with you, first of all. But if you're that person, contact me through other means, and we can figure out a better way, whether it be Venmo or PayPal. We'd find a better way to transport that money than YouTube Super Chat. That's just not a great way to move money around. Anyway, yeah, if you super chatted that much, you'd just be giving over $1,000 straight to Google. I wouldn't get all the money anyway. But if you're serious about it, we'll figure out a Venmo thing. Um, that was a core memory because it was the first time I bought my iPhone. What are you talking about? The public is under the impression that the external battery is an optional accessory. I've had to explain that there's no battery in the headset itself. Oh, really? Yeah, that's going to be a fun realization. He could super chat $500 7 times, but don't do that. I'm telling you. While that is physically possible, it is a bad idea for various reasons. Sending me 3500 through Venmo is a bad idea. I I just need to reiterate that. But thank you for the generous offer, Nicholas. Do I think the Vision Pro will work with the iPad to give you virtual displays as an iPad? No, that would require the iPad OS team to do some kind of work, which they are incapable of doing. We can't even get optimized battery charging on the iPad. We're not going to get true external monitor support on the iPad. But on the Mac, of course. Mac OS team is great. Mac does all kinds of great capable things. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when they find out you have to kind of keep that battery in your pocket at all times. It's very weird. Very unlike Apple, I must say. When is this thing getting released? So the pre-orders start in 10 days on Friday, January 19th, and then deliveries begin February 2nd. So anyway, let me make sure. Yeah, Quest 2 can do pass through, but the color is black and white. And I've heard mixed things about pass through on the Quest 3. It, I know people want to compare the two, but they're very different products, honestly. Um, I work in the tech field, and my coworkers who I corrected were on there. That's interesting. Yeah, it's very bizarre. I'm very curious to see what the demand is going to be like. Like are the ship times going to slip very quickly? That's what Ming Chi Kuo is thinking is going to happen. But what if he's wrong? What if no one actually orders this thing? Maybe we should start running some polls. Um, let's start one. Do you plan on do you plan on pre-ordering? Every tech poll I've seen is usually about 15 to 19% of people say yes, they're gonna pre-order it. Um, Pre-order Vision Pro. Maybe I should add another option called yes, but won't won't keep it. And then the last option is no. There you go. All right, it's probably a little delayed. So you did I hear Samsung is trying to make something similar for under $1,000? I didn't hear that, but it doesn't surprise me. Samsung's done VR stuff in the past. Um, I no longer think Quest 3 is worth $500 after trying Vision Pro. Guy I know who tried Vision Pro. Well, someone who was able to get their hands on a Vision Pro already probably uh, doesn't have a problem spending $3,500 on it. The next problem I was going to mention earlier, even if, let's say I try Apple Vision Pro, right, in February. It's really comfortable. I can wear it for hours and hours, no problem. It's really immersive. I really like the user interface. I use it with my Mac all the time. Okay, now the next problem is, can I afford to drop $3,500 on it? I know a lot of you guys are probably used to big YouTubers just having a ton of money and are just really rich. But that is not me. I'm not the big YouTuber that has a ton of money. Um, I mean, can I fit, like, is it physically possible to afford? Yes, but that doesn't make it a responsible decision, you know? So then the next question becomes like, should I spend that much money on something that I've already proven I don't need? I've clearly been able to work and live and get by in my personal life with both an iPhone and a MacBook for the past year, 2 years, 3 years, a very long time. Clearly, I can live without it. I might reach a point where I like it, but can't necessarily afford it. That that might be a new end result to some of the product reviews that I need to entertain the idea of. A lot of channels probably just don't want to say that because they don't like the idea of saying that I don't have enough money for something, because that requires a certain amount of humility and self-awareness. And YouTubers like to paint this picture of, wealth and success. And if you say you can't afford something, that's kind of like telling the world you're not successful or something. I don't care. You can believe what you want to believe. I have no problem telling you that I might reach a point where it's just like, I don't make enough money to justify this. I would like one. In the same way, it's probably easier to argue in the EV space, but like I could argue I'd really like to buy long range Model S, a Tesla that's super beautiful and excuse me, whew, it can go super long without stopping. It has a great charging curve, and I could make great distance. I love the Tesla Model S long range, and I'm comfortable saying if I had way more money, I would buy that, but I don't have that much money, so I can't justify it. And the usefulness of the Apple Vision Pro will very likely not justify the cost. But there's a different conclusion to the review if you say something like, even if I could justify the cost, I would still have these annoyances with it. I would still have these gripes with it. Um, even even if I did want to spend this much money, these are a bunch of things I don't have. So that very well could be the end result. I don't know. Again, I haven't tried it. I think the comfort levels after wearing it for hours and the immersiveness levels of it with the eye tracking and the hand tracking and how good the pass through is, that's all going to affect my recommendation, because obviously when I make a review like Apple Vision Pro, I'm not making it for, the 80% of people in the poll that are saying, no, I'm not pre-ordering it, I'm not buying it. I'm making it for everybody. And that includes the people that have way more money than me that can afford to buy a headset even if they don't even use it that much. So there's a lot of different angles to come at the product review purpose from. So I'm personally all in favor of just saying like, yep, this is really cool. This is really nice. I would like to keep it, but I can't justify the cost. It's too much. Um, I don't know. We'll see. And the other reason that's hard to justify for me is because my income is very volatile. At one point of the year, I'll make this much, and another point of the year, I'll make this much. It just depends on the time of year, how the videos are doing, how the channels are doing, and it's honestly been a lot less predictable lately. Uh, when I was younger and basically the tech channel was doing everything, um, it was pretty much always like late in the year, the paychecks are way up here because the CPMs are way higher and there's more news, like new iPhones are coming out, new Macs are coming out. So there's more things to talk about. But now that the EV channel has actually surpassed revenue from the tech channel, so my EV channel makes more money than this channel. It's kind of all over the place. It's dictated based on different EV news cycles now. So there's all kinds of weird like low seasons and high seasons that there used to not be. So depending on the channel's performance, it's hard to say like, oh, should I spend that much money on a pair of goggles? Per card says time to start using Apple Card interest-free financing. Now there's an idea. How many channels do I have? I used to have way too many. I've narrowed it down in 2024 to about 3. There's technically some little offshoots, but I don't really count those because they're kind of like sub channel. Like we have the Tailosive Tech channel, but then we also have the Tailosive Tech podcast channel. Does that count as a different channel? Kinda, but it's under the same Tailosive Tech umbrella. But the main thing is there's Tailosive Tech, EV, and Life. And Life is mostly not edited videos. I mean, longer form video. It's mostly shorts. A lot of them are edited, but the Life channel is just personal stuff. Just like if you want to see, when we travel places, I like documenting where we travel. Even if nobody watches it, I just like documenting it so I can go back and watch the videos and be like, oh yeah, remember when we went there? Sometimes it's finance related stuff, sometimes it's food related stuff. It's just like everything that's not tech goes on the Life channels. Are electric cars the future? No, they're the present. Model Y is the best selling car in the world. Do I think there will be a bin version of the M2 on the headset? Yes, I'm pretty confident it is, because the Apple Vision Pro, I don't think is doing anything that requires the M2 chip to be running at max speeds. There's a lot of rumors to suggest that, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest they needed something just more powerful than the A17 chip, but they didn't need anything as powerful as the M2. So the M2 is probably throttled down, not running at its max capacity, because most of what Vision Pro is doing is just, like movie apps, scrolling, playing videos, recording videos. It's not like, I don't even think Final Cut is going to work on it, even though they claim it runs iPad apps. There's probably a bunch of iPad apps that do run on it, but for the most part, it's not running Mac OS, okay? And it's running iPad version of apps, but I don't think it's a super high end M2 chip. Although it is 16 gigs of RAM, which is it's funny how that works, right? The $1,600 MacBook Pro got 512 gigs of storage, but only 8 gigs of unified memory. And Apple said, "Well, that's really like 16 gigs, right?" um, which I defended and I thought was fine. No one agreed with me, but I stood by my beliefs that I was like, you know what? I think a lot of people buying this are not necessarily pro users. They're just buying it because they wanted the better speakers or the better ports or the better display. There's still a lot of people buying that laptop that are just going to use it for web browsing, texting, basic stuff, media watching, and they don't need more than 8 gigs of unified memory. But uh, that's the $1,600 MacBook Pro. But then Apple Vision Pro gets 16 gigs of RAM, but 256 gigs of storage. It's the inverse problem. It's like, what? What? I don't know. That's weird. So I don't know why they skimped out on the storage so much. I think that's weird. But I know that production capacity will be low. That's what all the rumors are pointing to. They're not going to be able to build that many of them. That's part of the reason it's exclusive to the United States. Um, but that's part of the reason I don't think there will be that many tiers. That's what Samuel Siskin's asking about. Will there be two levels? I personally think there will only be two. Some people are speculating there's going to be three, maybe four. They think because it has an M2 chip, it's got to be priced similar to a Mac Mini or a MacBook Air, where it starts at 256 gig, but then there will be a 512, 1 terabyte, and 2 terabyte configuration. I think when your production capacity is that low, Apple did something similar to the iPhone 10. Um, they couldn't build that many iPhone 10s. That's partly why it was delayed. It launched in November instead of September, like most iPhones. And because the iPhone 10 was so hard to mass produce and they couldn't build that many of them, it was the first time they used a OLED display on an iPhone, and it had this drastically different OLED manufacturing technique where the bottom of the display curves inward so that they could get the bezel equal size all the way around. That had never been done before. Um, but production was very low, so there were only two storage configurations for the iPhone 10. It was 64 gigs and 256 gigs. That was it. There was no 128, there was no 512, and there were also only two color options. Probably in most recent Apple history, the least amount of color options we've ever had on an iPhone. And they didn't diversify it throughout the entire product release cycle. They killed it off in September when the 10s came out and they introduced gold. But we're used to the pros having three or four color options and the regular iPhones having four, five, six color options. And the iPhone 10 only came in silver, space gray, only two storage configuration, 64, 256. So they kept the manufacturing of it very simple because they couldn't build that many of them. So I think similarly to Apple Vision Pro, I predict there will only be two storage configurations. And based on the rumors we got from Mac Rumors this morning about the 1 terabyte model and the 16 gigs of RAM, I actually think I could be wrong on this and we'll find out soon enough. So luckily we don't have to wait very long. But I think the two trims could be 256 gigs and 1 terabyte. That's it. There's no 512. And the reason I think that is because it's kind of the same structure that the iPhone 10 modeled. You had the 64 gig iPhone 10, and then if you wanted more storage than that, they required you to go quadruple. 64 times 4, 256. So 4 times 256 would be roughly a terabyte. And I think that they want to keep manufacturing of it simple. And also, I think there's a good argument to be made that, well, some people using Apple Vision Pro do not need much storage. They're going to be streaming all the movies, not downloading them. And those people who have access to good internet and don't care too much about downloads, 256, yeah, for $3,500, that feels kind of low. But for some people who are just browsing the web, not looking or not downloading a bunch of content onto it, 256 is fine. But if you need more than 256 because you are going to be downloading a ton of movies onto it, or you are going to be recording a ton of videos on it, because it does support the whole spatial recording thing, then if you need more storage than 256, why is 512 suddenly going to be enough? Just go all out with it. And honestly, because it's $3,500, I wouldn't be surprised if they were comfortable going higher than a terabyte. But the rumors, at least, if I'm going to account for anything that the dev kit um, is saying, then I would say 1 terabyte probably on the high end, because I don't think people are going to be taking a ton of photos with it, and spatial videos aren't, that huge. They're pretty huge, but they're not as huge as like ProRes video on the iPhone is, and the iPhone only goes up to 1 terabyte. So I think that it's in a weird category. It's hard to compare it to anything. It's like, well, the iPads go up to 2 terabytes, and that seems kind of pointless. But the iPads are a lot cheaper than the Apple Vision Pro is. So I don't know. Let's see. You think Apple Watch is the last big success of Apple? Um, no. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I think not necessarily the first generation Apple Vision Pro. A lot of people might even argue the original iPhone wasn't that big a success. You could argue that Apple really found their stride and the iPhone really went mainstream around the 4 and the 5, not so much on the original. The original was critiqued a lot and it was behind technologically from a lot of other smartphones at that time. But it laid the groundwork and it laid the foundation for what was to come. And it showed Apple what they needed to work on and what they needed to fix in the iterations. It's usually in the future iterations that the product line finds its stride. Um, you know, AirPods were popular, fairly popular when they first came out, but they really got insanely popular when AirPods Pro launched. Now Apple says AirPods Pro are the most popular AirPods. Most people buy those. So they started with the launch generation. A lot of people critiqued them. A lot of people liked them, but after a few years of development and after listening to the feedback for a few years, they figured out how to improve upon it and how to make it go even more mainstream. So I think similarly, um, Apple Vision Pro is just kind of laying the groundwork. It's laying the foundation. It doesn't need to be the best selling thing ever. It probably won't even matter if the demand was on. If Apple Vision Pro is $1,000, it wouldn't really make that big a difference because they can only build what 300,000 for the year. They can't build that many of them. So even if they could um, price it way lower so that the masses could afford it, I don't think the sales results would be that different. Um, but there's been more pre-production units with 512 than 1 terabyte. Well, it's possible then that 512 gigs could be the highest it goes. Who knows? But I don't think the Apple Watch is the last big success of Apple, personally. Honestly, if we want to talk in the more services business, the Apple TV Plus has done way better than I expected. I thought that was going to be a big flop. The idea of just only doing exclusive content and not really having a back catalog, I didn't think was going to pay off. And it was a slow burn. It didn't take off right away, but now Apple's comfortable charging $10 a month for Apple TV Plus, which is twice what it was when it launched. And I know a lot of people that are like, yeah, no, I pay for TV Plus. They've got good stuff. Everyday people that are not techie. I even know people that are not iPhone users. I know people that use Android phones that are like, oh yeah, I like this one show on TV Plus. This show on TV Plus is great. It really Apple carved out their own little niche of the streaming market, and I think it's going to pay off for them in the long run, because now just like every exclusive title they've got, and no one can take it away from them, and they've got a lot of good titles. And I don't love everything on there, but there's a lot of popular movies and shows on there that people have recommended and fallen in love with, and now I'm excited for. I don't know what we were doing. My wife was on some website and she found an option for I think we bought something and it came with a free month of Apple TV Plus. And she was like, should we redeem it? And I remember saying, like, oh, when does Severance Season 2 come out? We should redeem it when Severance Season 2 came out. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm actually looking forward to Apple TV Plus content. What happened? I thought that was going to be a big flop, and it turned out to be a slow burn, but a big success. Um, I think they don't expect you to download a lot of apps or store a lot of data on Vision Pro. There will only be a few supported apps, so maybe 256 gigs is okay, but it's crazy low for 3500. Well, that's what I am more upset by. It's not that, to me, it's not a matter of, well, people won't use 256 gigs. It's like, okay, that argument works when you're making a much cheaper product. I use that argument. I use that when we're talking about the MacBook Air or the new 16 inch, not 16-inch, sorry, the new 14-inch MacBook Pro that came out, right? With the M3 chip, not the Pro chip. That only has 8 gigs of RAM. And I was saying that, well, for a product like that, a lot of people are buying it and not doing a lot of pro workflows on it. So they were trying to bring the price down. Before, if you wanted a mini LED MacBook with, a 22-hour battery life, with good speakers and a great microphone like the one I'm using right now, with an HDMI port and SD card slot, if you wanted that 22-hour battery life with mini LED, it was $2,500. The only way to get that battery life was with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which was much more expensive, much heavier. Now, you can buy a mini LED ProMotion equipped MacBook with better battery life than the M3 Pro powered 14-inch MacBook, and still has great speakers, still has an HDMI port, still has SD card slot. Not all of these things are necessarily pro uses. It's not just pros that want an HDMI port, or it's not just pros that might want mini LED or a ProMotion display. Pro is a very vague term, right? Like vague as in, just because it says pro, that doesn't mean everybody's going to be editing 8K video off of it. Everybody's going to be writing Xcode on it. Everybody's going to be doing logic. No, a lot of people buy a pro iPhone simply because they wanted a slightly better battery life, or they wanted a slightly brighter display or a slightly higher refresh rate. That's the reason a lot of people go with a pro iPhone. They're willing to spend several $100s more just to get one or two little features, even though they're technically not a professional. In the same way, the entry level MacBook Pro I think is perfect, because there's some people that don't need all the crazy hardcore performance of the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros, which used to start at $2,000, but the $2,000 MacBook had an 18-hour battery life. And if you wanted more than 20 hours, you had to get the 16-inch. Now they found a way to bring it down to $1,600, and you still get a lot of the Pro perks. So I said, yeah, I get that the specs are pretty bad, pretty low. 8 gigs of unified memory for a $1,600 laptop looks bad, but if you understand the market behind it, there's a lot of people that are cross-shopping that MacBook with MacBook Airs, and they're debating, if I want 512 gigs of storage, the MacBook Air is $1,500 anyway. So it's only $100 more, and I get mini LED, I get better speakers, I get better battery life, I get better ports. Of course, I think I would personally recommend that $1,600 MacBook to a ton of people I know out there who are more interested in having better battery and a better screen and better speakers. The MacBook Air speakers are not that great. I'm sorry. I reviewed that laptop and I was not that impressed by it. But I reviewed the M3 MacBook Pro, and other than the display defect I had on mine, which was a problem, I was like, this is a great laptop for the money. Um, so I understand that argument of people aren't going to use that much anyway when we're talking about lowering prices. But Apple Vision Pro, when we're talking about a $3,500 first generation, I say no, 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 no. This is not the product you cheap out on. This is not the product you go skimp out on the little details like that. I'd say go full on, give that thing a terabyte. I don't care if they're going to use it. It doesn't cost anything relative to the overall cost of the product. When you're trying to get a product down to like $1,600, I can understand trying to take out every last dollar you can. But if we're talking about a $3,500 product, then the difference between a 256 gig NAND and a terabyte NAND is like nothing. Like, what the heck? Um, Skylar says, same. I thought for sure all of those services they launched in 2019, except for the Apple Card, were going to fall on their face. Happy to eat my words with Apple TV Plus. It was honestly the opposite. That's what's funny. Like when the Apple did their big services event in 2019, still I stand by this, worst Apple event of all time. So boring, so long, such a waste of time. I hated that event with a passion. I thought the Apple Card was the most interesting part, and everything else was pretty boring. And it turns out the Apple Card, at least financially, was the biggest flop, and Apple TV Plus ended up really taking off. Everything else though didn't really go anywhere. Apple Arcade didn't go that far. Apple News Plus didn't really go anywhere. Um, I don't think Apple Fitness Plus. I mean, I know people that like it, but I don't know financially how well it's doing. I don't think it's doing very well. The fact that TV Plus has gone up in price a lot, I think, is a testament to how well it's doing. If Apple is comfortable raising the price that much, that it means that they've got a lot of people subscribed to it, and they know there's a lot of demand for it. If the price doesn't change all that much, then it's probably because it's not doing all that well. Um, 16 gigs of RAM isn't even that much to work with in 2024. RAM and storage are the cheapest things to add, more of it in tech product. It's not the same that you would put in a PC, though, is my point. The whole concept of having different storage, I know it doesn't cost them that much extra, but you spread out the profit margin across the higher options. So you can afford to put, I mean, in the same way, you have to skimp on one thing. So the $1,600 MacBook skimps on RAM. But can you find me another laptop out there that will have over 20-hour battery life with a ProMotion 120 hertz display that has mini LED with extreme dynamic range? Um, with a chip as powerful as the M3 chip, with speakers that sound as good as the MacBook Pros do, with microphones that sound as good. So no, you don't get the best RAM and storage compared to other PC laptops, but you're also not going to get that same great display. You're not going to get that same great speaker setup and microphone setup. You're not going to get the same battery life as you do with that laptop. So you win some, you lose some. It's a trade-off, and I think a lot of people are willing to make that trade-off because a lot of people are not going to be doing things to run out of 8 gigs of unified memory. I tested it myself, and I had to do some pretty crazy things to get the 8 gigs of RAM to actually choke. And there's a lot of people that are going to be using that MacBook Pro at the same exact way they would use a MacBook Air. You know, they watch videos on it, they write a few essays here and there, they check email. And I think 8 gigs of RAM, they basically will do the same things they do on their MacBook as they do as their phone. They just wanted a different form factor. I know people like that. It's totally a real market. Apple's well aware of this, and it's a narrative I think Apple is fine with the tech community pushing, because all it really does is convince people who are on the fence to spend more money. Apple's great at that. Apple's really good at that, honestly, because the narrative we're sending now is that everybody needs 16 gigs of RAM, which means if someone's on the fence about buying the new MacBook, then you convince them to spend the extra $200, even if they're the kind of person that would have been totally fine with 8 gigs of RAM. um, development of apps and software cheaper and easier to work with. What are you talking about? Oh, to make development of apps, software, and yeah, a lot of people are not developing anything on MacBook Pros. Why do we keep trying to replace or change the smartphone foldables when smartphones haven't reached their peak just yet? What? Why do you think they haven't reached their peak is my question. Every phone looks exactly the same. I think they have kind of reached their peak. I don't think there's so much more to give to phones. And I also don't think trying to replace or change the smartphone takes away. You can improve and try to uh, give more to the smartphone while also looking for other avenues. In the same way that, the iPhone or laptops in many ways kind of kill the need for desktops. And there's a lot less people with laptops and desktops now because phones have gotten so good. That doesn't mean Apple stops working on laptops and desktops, right? You can pursue both fields at once. So in the same way that Apple might be trying to tackle some more use cases with Vision Pro, and maybe certain use cases with Vision Pro means you don't have to use your phone as much, um, that results in uh, that's okay because Apple's still developing the iPhone to be better at the same time. Let's see. I'd argue that Apple Card, from Apple's perspective, was a success. Goldman Sachs had the loss, yes, but Apple not get the market share. They just keep adding features. I guess you're right for Apple. It sucks for the bank, but it might not be a success for Apple if the bank drops it, which is pretty much what's happening. Goldman Sachs is leaving. Um, CES laptops with the new Intel chips look very promising in terms of battery life and displays. Well, yeah, but those are just coming out now. It's like if you give them more time, they'll develop something else. They'll leapfrog each other, I'm sure. If you give a company more time, they'll develop something faster. But Apple released those MacBooks back in October, right? Whenever. Um, and a lot of people want Mac OS. A lot of people are not cross shopping PC laptops with Mac laptops just because they're buying their laptop that works with their ecosystem better. Some people buy Windows machines because they use certain software that's only available on Windows. Some people only use Macs because they want it to work well with their phone and their watch and their whatever. So they're not cross shopping. So you could have maybe Intel comes out with a new chip with a far superior battery life and way better performance than the M3, but if it's only going into Windows machines, then it's not an option for a lot of people. Um, that's my point. Um, Pup Mocha. If you're okay with it in the air, then my point has been made because a lot of people are going to be cross shopping the MacBook Air with the entry level MacBook Pro because the pricing is very similar, especially if they want 512 gigs of storage. The MacBook Air, the M2, um, is only a couple $100 away once, especially once you start specking it out. Here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. If I switch to, here we go. Bye. Let me see here. Um, yeah, 512 gigs is 1500. So for $100 more, you can get mini LED, same amount of memory, a much faster chip with the M3, ProMotion display, much longer battery life, and more ports with SD card slot and HDMI port. So if you think it makes sense on a MacBook Air, then my point has been made. Something that I wish Apple would add to the Pro lineup of MacBooks is cellular connectivity for remote work on the go. Been asking for it for over a decade now. I still don't understand why they don't have it, but everyone keeps saying they're waiting for Apple to develop their own in-house modems, and I'm like, why? They didn't do that for the iPad. Like the first generation iPad that came out in 2010 had cellular. Apple's never made the modems for those. And the iPads have much smaller batteries with weak battery life in them, and cellular just makes your battery life worse. The MacBooks have even bigger batteries. So if anything, the MacBooks have more of a right to have cellular than the iPads do. It makes no sense. I really don't get it. Um, the best thing about Windows PCs is that I don't use one. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, M1 MacBook Air is still an amazing deal if you're on a budget. I just know a lot of people that either don't like the design or they want something that's a little bit more future proof. Does the Max not have hotspot support? I mean, everything has hotspot support. That's just Wi Fi. If anything has Wi Fi, it can connect to a personal hotspot. But um, Dennis is asking why MacBooks can't have cellular modems like an iPad or an iPhone do so that they could have their own separate data plan. But back when I had iPads, I never got the cellular version because I could always hotspot off my phone and that seemed to work fine. It's much easier for me to just use up my phone's data and charge my phone. Sure, it drains the battery life, but usually, whatever you're using, whether it's a MacBook, an iPad, or a car, whatever's using the hotspot usually has a much bigger battery and it can top off the iPhone anyway. So I never thought the extra cell phone plan was worth the money because it's usually going to be an extra $10 a month or $20 a month. And then a year goes by and you spent, 120, $200 just on cellular data. You can buy a battery bank for a lot less than that. Yeah. M2 Air cheaper at Best Buy. Same thing with the MacBook Pro. Yeah, same story. Do I agree with Quinn that when Apple switched to gestures going home, there should have been a pressure push on the white home bar on the bottom and swiping up should have stayed as control center? What? Did he say that? I don't remember him saying that. Should have been a pressure push on the white home bar at the bottom and swiping up should have stayed. No. I don't know exactly what he said, but at least the way you're describing it sounds much worse to me. Control center is not activated as much as going home, and a gesture of swiping up is a lot more easy and intuitive and natural, in my opinion, than pushing hard on something. Pressure push on the white home bar. I mean, we don't even have 3D touch. How do you pressure push? Um, they can also make a hotspot if you're connected to internet on them, and you can use them as your Wi-Fi. Okay. I've never once wished I had an iPad watch or even a car with cellular support. If I had a Tesla, the opinion might be different. Even in my Tesla, I can connect it to my phone's hotspot and put it in drive, and a bunch of features unlock because you have Tesla wants to charge you $10 a month or whatever for premium connectivity, which unlocks a few things like satellite view and music streaming. But you can't unlock satellite view, but you can unlock music streaming just by connecting to your phone's hotspot. I don't know why you can't unlock satellite view. I guess they don't want you using your phone's hotspot. They would rather you pay $10 a month. Um, Anyway, I think YJ Choi asked a question, and I want to make sure, or want to make sure no one else asked anything before the stream began. He's a Tailosive Tech Pro member, so thank you, YJ Choi. Um, what are my predictions for storage tiers slash pricing? When do I think Apple will roll out to other countries? My bet is that it's going to be a slow rollout. I think Apple Vision Pro will be US exclusive. Here's my face in case you're wondering where I am. I think Apple Vision Pro will be US exclusive for 2024. Maybe midway, or I think they'll probably wait till the second generation to start rolling it out to other countries, but it probably won't be a lot. It'll be like a handful. This is kind of how the rollout went for the HomePod and Siri. It was like a very slow rollout, and Apple Vision Pro is even harder to produce than HomePod. So I don't think it's going to be a quick, like, boom, they're just everywhere. How much screen time do I think Vision OS will get at DubDub this year? Probably a reasonable amount, because if they're delivering in early February, Groundhog Day, um, then we're going to have a lot of time for everyday people to try them on. Journalists who are not under contract or not under embargo or NDA are going to be able to say whatever they want about the product. So there will be a lot of critical feedback that Apple will act on. I personally have a huge laundry list of features that I want Apple to add to Vision OS already, that I think would even be possible with the current hardware. So probably a good, I don't know, 20 minutes. What is the average OS get? I think it'll get the same amount of time as like a iOS gets. Maybe more, because there's not a lot of things they can add to iOS at this point. It has RCS now. And then my predictions for storage tiers pricing. I could be wrong, but that's okay. I'm okay being wrong. I've been wrong a lot. So I'm going to stand by my original prediction, which is, obviously, we know the 256 gig starting. And we know that's 3,500. So I think there will just be one other higher tier that'll be 1 terabyte for about 4,000. It'll be 3,999. Apple kind of likes those simples. So it'll be 4 times as much storage for an extra $400. Is it worth it? No, it's way too expensive. Don't get it. It's not a good deal. But is it exciting? Is it interesting? Is it worth an in-store demo? Yeah, I would say so. I think lots of people should go try it out just to see how they feel about it, just to see how immersive it is. I think Apple's going to lean heavily on Apple Store demos to try to sell this product, because they know that not everybody can afford it anyway. Um, so I predict it's going to be just two storage tiers: 3,500 for 256 gig, or 4,000 for 1 terabyte. The reason why on-device cellular connectivity is preferred is because of two reasons. Most plans have limited hotspot. Two, hotspot data is deprioritized on all mobile networks. That's a good argument. I could see that. I just feel like anywhere I've taken my laptop, um, I usually have access to decent Wi-Fi, and if I'm without access to Wi-Fi and I'm using my phone hotspot, it's usually not for a very long time. In which case, I have Mint Mobile, which does not have like a huge hotspot data amount. I think it's what, 5 gigs, 10 gigs, or something like that. It's not a ton. I think there's, depending on which tier you have, Dennis will correct me in a second here, but I only have like 5 or 10 gigs of hotspot data. And usually, if I'm on a laptop in between two places, like I'm traveling from one place to another, where I don't have internet in between, I'm probably just watching a video, doing something basic. Um, and I'm not going to use up that much data that quickly. But if for some reason I had my MacBook and I was routinely away from the house, and also not at a coffee shop with Wi-Fi, or not at an airport with Wi-Fi, um, for whatever reason, I could understand why people would want full speed cellular and no data cap, that kind of thing. I thought some carriers like Visible had unlimited data caps, unlimited data on hotspot. I thought. How long do I think it will be before we get the battery on front or back of the headset instead of the belts? I don't know. That's a lot of weight, and Apple Vision Pro is already pretty heavy. I don't know. See, if they just drop the eyesight display, that would save some weight. And put the battery just in here. I don't know. Batteries are heavy, dude, and they get hot, so that affects your cooling. I think it might be a while. I don't even think the first, or well, definitely not the first, but I don't even think the second or third generation will incorporate the battery into the head mount. I think it might continue to be like a separate pack, but at least servicing the battery is really easy, right? You don't have to worry about your battery deteriorating too much. You don't have to replace the whole product. You just pull the battery bank off the cable, buy a new battery bank. Maybe it's $100. Done. You don't have to take the whole thing apart. Yeah, I've heard really good things about Visible. I really like the plans I've seen from them. It's just I'm not a heavy data user, which is why I continue to use Mint. But if Mint goes under or if Mint starts raising their prices, I'm probably going to switch to Visible. But so far, Mint has been great. No complaints. When my fiber got cut at my house, I was using about 20 gigabytes of data per day on my work laptop that has cellular. There are a few plans that have unlimited hotspot uncapped, but they are enterprise plans. Really? Yeah, what is Jordan talking about then? He's saying Visible's it's got unlimited hotspot. At least my friend Nick had Visible and he said they had unlimited hotspot, but how often does your fiber get cut at the house? That seems like an edge case to me. How long do I think it will be before we get the battery on the front? Oh, sorry, I just read that. Do I think we were still going to be seeing a spring event now that Vision Pro is launching without one? Yeah, I think that was kind of what the rumor mills were pointing to, is that it was going to be Vision Pro early launch so that the spring event can be more focused on other things. Like, I don't think they can all be right, but there's rumors suggesting we're getting new iPads, which is kind of overdue. We didn't get a single new iPad in all of 2023, so a spring event makes sense. There's been spring events for the past couple of years. They're kind of predictable now, um, and I think we'll get possibly uh, new iPhone colors would be very likely. I felt like the iPhone 15 was lacking in terms of color options, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if they saved their favorite color options for the spring event. And also, they could easily refresh the MacBooks at any time, or if not the MacBooks, the Mac Mini. We still haven't gotten the M3 Ultra, which should be pretty easy to make. It's the same thing as the M2 Ultra, just with M3 Max chips instead of M2 Max chips. And there's already been talk that there's work on a Mac Studio coming out with an M3 Ultra. They could also just slap an M3 chip in a Mac Mini, or at the spring event, they could launch the USB C Magic Keyboard, USB C Magic Mouse. There's little things. I don't think it'll be a big event. Like I said, Vision Pro is by far. I just stubbed my toe somehow. Ouch. That was stupid. Vision Pro is launching so early in the year. I feel like this is like the most exciting thing. It's too soon. Everything after Vision Pro is going to be so much less interesting to me. But yeah, the spring event is still going to happen. It's just going to be like, okay, new chip, new chip, new chip, new port, new port. And I'm hoping none of the rumors have said this, but I still wish it would be really great if we could get iPhone SE 4 at the spring event. But everyone's saying it's not happening. Oh well. I don't think eyesight accounts for much in terms of weight. I think it just draws power. I'm wondering if eyesight is on, even if nobody else is in the room. I'm pretty sure they clarified that it's not. I'm pretty sure it only turns on if it detects other people walking around. Um, but the space on the inside, because it's a lenticular retina display, it's not so much about weight as it is space. I think that the bulkiness of the headset, it can't get too bulky, but maybe if you could drop that display there, maybe you don't have to cool as hard because you're not running two displays right next to each other, and you could use that extra space for battery. I don't know. I got to try this thing on and move around with it a little bit before I decide whether or not I think that incorporating the battery in the headset is a big issue or a small issue. Um, but yeah. Am I going to celebrate 1 billion views? Am I reaching 1 billion views? I don't know. Should I? Is that a thing? Let me check. Where would you find that? Is it Social Blade? YouTube used to make it easy. I don't know how many total channel views I have. What is it? Hello? You search. Oh, no. I don't think I'm anywhere close to that. Wait, that's not the number. How do you find that? I don't know. Uh, sorry. I'm lost. Basically, oh, here it is. 93 video views. I can blow that up so you can see it. We're at 93 million total views for the channel. So I don't think I'll be celebrating 1 billion. Maybe we should celebrate 100 million at some point. I don't know. That's going to be a while. Don't get as much views as I used to. Whatever. I'd still expect a Vision Pro segment in the spring event for Vision OS 1.1 and also highlighting some of the experience that devs released. Yeah, they could probably talk about it a little bit. That's a good point. Mac Pro is still going to be around for M3 Ultra. Oh, just beats me, probably. They just throw a new chip in there. I don't think it's a big deal, but Visible has unlimited hotspot, but it's hard throttled to 5 megabits per second. Other plans on the market generally throttle to 512. Interesting. Both use cases are not ideal when trying to get real work done. Okay. I did not know that. How did I feel about the Quest 3 as far as weight? I felt fine. I don't know. I've got a big neck though. Maybe I don't find the MacBook Pro heavy, but yeah, I didn't think the Quest was heavy. Um, but Apple's headset is probably far heavier because they made it out of metal and glass for some stupid reason. Metal. I'm planning on selling my iPad after I get Vision Pro. Hey, I'm not saying you should get Vision Pro, but you should definitely sell the iPad. I'm surprised 17% of people said they plan on ordering Vision Pro and keeping it. Wow, that's way higher than I thought after a vote of 250. I'm sure my polls are biased, though. If we polled the general public, it'd probably be like 2%, 1%. Um, Probably less than 1%, honestly. Um, do you expect sales of iPad to be decreasing after Vision Pro launches? No, I don't think they compete very much because one is $3,500, and most iPads that sell are sub $500. The most popular iPad is the budget one, that's 300, $400. So they don't really. I don't think they really compare with each other. They go after completely different markets. I do think iPad sales will continue to decrease though, because similar to iPhones, they are getting very, very similar, and there's not that many differences between them. So there's very little reason to upgrade your iPad, and iPhone screens are getting bigger each year. So there's less and less justification to having an iPad and an iPhone. At least I think more people will continue to come to the same conclusion I have. My parents and sister and everybody in my family originally got iPads when they were younger, but none of them have bought an iPad in the past 5 years because their iPhones have gotten so big, and they're just like, I don't need an iPad. It does everything that my iPhone does, and it just is another device I got to charge. So I think the trend will probably be more more big phone, less tablet. But I do think that if people buy Apple Vision Pro, it will probably eat into the motivation to have an iPad. If you bought it for me, I would keep it and try to use it. Oh, that's the first nice thing about it, James has said. If you polled the general public, the majority would select what's a Vision Pro. Yeah, good point. I don't know. Apple's pretty good at marketing, though. Better than Tesla, better than Aptera. Apple's like chief marketing of the whole world. Um, Apple is intentionally getting rid of Johnny Ive design, even the good stuff he did, even though Intel was the one holding his designs back. Yeah, it was Intel that made the butterfly keyboard so unreliable. By the way, you should 100% switch to Visible if they do a price for life promo. If you have them, you also get $10 off Verizon Home Internet as well, which should become available to you. If it's, I checked in my area, it's not available. Um, I'll think about it. Um, I don't know. I really like the low price of Mint though. I get that if you want unlimited data, Visible's probably the better value, but there's a lot of people that don't use that much data, genuinely, especially in my personal life. I've convinced so many of my friends and family to switch to Mint because they're just like, yeah, I really just like watch a few YouTube videos on cellular here and there, but for the most part, I work at home or I go to work and there's Wi-Fi at work. So the only time I need cell data is like when I'm traveling between places and I'm usually using maps or just streaming music, in which case 5 gigs, 10 gigs is plenty. Um, but I know people in the tech community tend to be more data hungry, and a lot of us, oh, I watch 4K video with my 5G ultra wide, and I used a terabyte of cell data a month. Okay, then get your unlimited plans. But there's definitely a ton of people out there I know that are like, yeah, no, five gigs a month is fine. I know people that don't even come close to maxing out 5 gigs. I actually, my biggest debate I've had between people with Mint is not with Visible. There's a lot of people that use Xfinity Mobile because they already have Xfinity Internet. And those people are using even less. They're using like 1 or 2 gigs a month. And they justify it because they're like, well, it only charges me by the gig and I don't use that much data. But if they go on a trip and accidentally use 5, 10, 15 gigs, then their bill goes way up. Which is something I recommend about Mint is that there's not an overage fee. Even if you hit the 5 gig limit, the data just gets slower. It doesn't charge you extra. Um, you should look into Mobile X then. They only charge you for the data you use. Well, it's kind of the same concept of again, this is why Elon shouldn't have called Twitter X. There's no way you can trademark the letter X. There's so many different X's. There's Xfinity, there's Mobile X. I don't like the idea of charging just based on what you use. I mean, it's good if you don't use much, but occasionally, not all the time, someone will go on a trip and suddenly use a bunch of data, and that's when they typically get the big cell phone bill. What I like about Mint is the concept of just like having one bill a year and then you're done and you don't have to think about it. Sure, there might be occasions where you need a little bit extra, but you won't wake up to it suddenly huge because most people don't know how much data they're using. That's what I've discovered. Most people aren't aware. They don't care. They just I paid for my cell phone bill and then they just go about their day and they don't think about it. And I think Mint is the most like affordable slash user friendly because if they do accidentally use up a ton of data, like I know a lot of family members that can't even tell if their phone is on Wi-Fi or cellular. I have to point out to them, look at the top corner of the display that says Wi-Fi, you're on Wi-Fi. If the Wi-Fi icon isn't there, then you're on cellular. I have a ton of family members that don't even realize that. So if their Wi-Fi is down or their phone didn't connect to the Wi-Fi at some reason, they'll suddenly rack up a bunch of data. And if they're on a pay-per-use plan like that, then they suddenly wake up to a huge phone bill. So that's why I recommend Mint to a lot of people. Is like the bill's not going to go up even if you accidentally use up a bunch of data. Um, how long before the first Vision Pro related car accident? Weeks. I'm sure Tech Rax is going to get in an accident immediately the second he gets one. I only need a lot of mobile data when I'm living in dorms that I had no Wi-Fi. Nowadays, I don't use more than like 1.5 gigs. Yep, same exact story I've heard in my life and my family's life. Um, Mint is definitely the cheapest. Yeah, especially if you can refer people. That saves you a ton of money. I had a bad experience with Verizon in the past, so I'd never use them again. It was regarding data usage and extra fees. I haven't talked to someone who hasn't had a bad experience with Verizon. Good technology is wasted on most people. No, I just don't think most people care. I think that's the running theme with a lot of our tech debates we have is like us fussing about RAM and refresh rates and storage. And the reality, the average consumer, they don't give a crap. Um, Buying extra high speed data is only $2 per gig versus Mint that charges $10 for one. It sounds like it's about the same price then. Um, this is why Comcast should have bought Twitter. Comcast, no, that Twitter would have been much worse under Comcast, even worse than Elon, I'm afraid. They would change Twitter Blue based on your region. What's your income? We're gonna base your Twitter Blue membership on how much you make. T-Mobile has been fine for me and my family, pretty cheap individually for the family plan or whatever it's called. I bet it's not mint cheap. Um, Most people who buy $1,000 iPhone only utilize $200 phone features. Eh, I mean, yeah, I don't think they're gonna buy an Android though. I know that's what you're getting at, but um, does that $200 Android phone have iMessage? Because that's what they're looking for. And they want their apps to be familiar. I know people that haven't changed their wallpaper in 7 years, let alone trying to teach them how Android works. That's going to be way too big a headache. Could Tesla survive without Elon? I think it is surviving without Elon. Elon's barely at Tesla anymore. Um, I use 60 gigs of cellular a month. I don't know how. My data plan reset on the 7th, and I'm already almost at 3 gigs. It's an insane amount of data. The bill went up $50 or more for some months. Yeah, I've seen big carriers do that kind of thing. I've had bad experiences with T-Mobile too. Um, they should bring the Apple Watch walkie-talkie feature to the iPhone so that people won't use it there too. Does anyone use the walkie-talkie feature? That's a good question. Anyway, I gotta get going. I've enjoyed the stream. Thank you for the super chats and the members. Give it an iPhone 8. Sometimes some people just want a really good battery life and a really good camera, and they want an iPhone because that's what they're comfortable with. So they'll buy a new one because they're afraid to go refurbished and go used. I recommend most people should go used or refurbished, but a lot of people just don't want to fuss around with that. They just want to buy it. Um, it's only similar cost if you buy Mint at the yearly price and assume you never purchase extra data. That's everybody I know on Mint. That's my point. I think it's generally cheaper because everybody I know on Mint never buys extra data and they always pay annual. And I think that's how most people don't, like, if they run out of data, they don't figure out how do I buy more. I think us techies are more in touch with that kind of thing. How much data am I using? I need to buy more access. They just go, oh no, I ran out. All right, I'll wait till next month. That's at least everybody in my family does that. I know I have parents, I have grandparents, I have friends, I have sisters, multiple sisters, and my wife. That they're all on the cheapest Mint plan. They hardly ever run out of data, and if they do run out, they're done. That's it. But anyway, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I hope you have a excellent rest of your day. Take care, all. Bye bye.